All right, lesson 10, utilizing alternative assessments. Once again, this is another tool for helping kids to stay engaged. And the question is, why should we vary assessments at all? Why should we not just use the same tests, same quizzes, same labs that we always do? We already have a little bit of variation because we have labs in chemistry that varies it a little bit, but why should we consider varying it even more? Well, first of all, there's learning styles. Traditional school is designed to work for these kids, auditory. I'm an extreme auditory learner, which is ironic because I'm actually half deaf in both ears. I wear hearing aids, but I'm an auditory learner, and that's how I learn. If I sit in class and learn and listen, sorry, I sit in class and listen, and I take some notes, I generally don't have to study. Like it goes in my brain and stays there. What I've learned though is that for organizing information, I'm visual. And so I like visual things to help me do organizing information or displaying information. And I'm not really all that kinesthetic. I'm not a big hands-on person, but some kids are, like my younger brother. He's very kinesthetic and he's very visual. Auditory is not his thing. And so that was more of a struggle for him. And so a lot of times your kids who struggle in school are going to be one of these two. Oftentimes a lot of these. Where auditory learners are going to excel. Visuals can usually do okay because we write notes on the board, that kind of thing. Kinesthetics are going to struggle. So we want to give some type of assessment to help them out. I also find that alternative assessments can help to move us up what's called Bloom's taxonomy. If you've never learned this, that this is what we call a low order thinking skill. This is what we call a high order thinking skill. And that, a lot of tests are kind of like down here, but you can create an alternative assessment that drives it up here. Now, chemistry, by the way, it's a little different than a lot of other classes because even basic chemistry really pushes kids here. Like doing nomenclature, like I had a teacher explain this to me, which I just hadn't thought of. She's like, for you, nomenclature is down here. It's remembering. You would be limited by how fast you could write out a bunch of formulas. She's like, well, think about it, what's going on with a kid. A kid's having to analyze. They're having to say, hey, is this ionic or is this covalent? Okay, it's ionic, all right. Is this a representative metal or is this a transition metal? Is it a non-metal or a polyatomic ion? Oh, it's a polyatomic ion. Which one? Is it an 8, an I? They're having to analyze all these different steps just to answer one question. And so, but we can use alternative assessments to kind of help push to this side where they're creating something, they're evaluating something. We're pushing those higher order thinking skills. Alternative assessments are good for meeting next gen science standards if that's one of the areas that your school's emphasizing, or your district, that you can use these alternative assessments to push in those areas. And then we have multiple intelligences. That would be things like, people just have different things they're good at. Like my wife's very good at the linguistic and verbal. I'm really good at the intrapersonal. I know myself really well. She's really good at the interpersonal. She's a therapist. That's what she does. I'm definitely logical, mathematical, not musical. I don't have a musical bone in my body. Not super coordinated either, but I love nature and I learn by being in nature. And so there are different things. And so different kids learn different ways because that's where their brain is oriented, in these different multiple intelligences. So by using multiple assessments or some type of alternative assessment, which are things like PowerPoint projects, make a game, make a poem, write a song, record a song, make a skit, whatever. By using these, we can access these other learning styles, push them to higher order thinking skills, and help kids with these non-traditional school intelligences. So how do we do this? First, to make sure that an alternative assessment works for you, you gotta have clear guidelines. Hey, these are my expectations. This is what I want. This is what this section needs to look like. This is what this part needs to look like. This is what this part needs to look like. And give yourself some grace here. The first time you do an alternative assessment, you may think you're giving clear guidelines, but you won't realize where it falls short until the kids get into it. And then when you're grading them, you're like, ooh, that's not what I wanted. Why not? Oh, because I didn't tell them clearly enough. And then over the years, you build that and you get a more refined product. Like I've learned when I do a PowerPoint project, I know exactly what I have to spell out. And I even spend like half a period spelling it out. And I even I have a sample one that I've made and I show them like, hey, I want this, not this. Like for me, pet peeve, blurry pictures drive me nuts. I show my kids how to do it, that kind of thing. It's also important that you give them a clear rubric of how things are going to be graded. Hey, this is worth 20 points. This is worth 10 points. This is worth 5 points. Those kind of things. Like for me, grammar and spelling, always worth 10 points every project they ever do for me. Same thing on quizzes. I'm sorry, not quizzes, labs. That 10 points of their lab grade is going to be grammar and spelling because it matters. Look, it's not English class. I'm like, you're writing English. It matters. And I'm not a grammar Nazi. I'm not, but if they don't use a comma at all, then I'm going to spot that kind of thing. I'm generally going to spot the rules that 90% of good proficient writers would spot. Okay. All right. So have a clear rubric. That's really helpful. And it's also helpful for you as a teacher because, like for me, what I'll do is I'll make a spreadsheet because I'm a math science guy. And so I like to have all my group names or my student names over on this side, and I'll have each category in the rubric. And I literally just type in how many points they get for each section, and I have Excel add it up for me and give me a grade. And I just do it that way to keep it simple for myself. So here's some example alternative assessments. So a PowerPoint, a Keynote, or a Prezi. Prezis are an online tool that they can use. It's a little cumbersome. It's a little hard to get used to, but for your older kids, I think they can do it and they look really good. You can have them doing a movie and then interview, real, fictional, depending upon what you're doing. Like you could have them interview one of the atomic scientists or something like that. Flowcharts and mind webs work really well, especially around like nomenclature where you got to identify, you help them see what all the steps are. Infographics, making their own infographics, do a review game. All of these things can be done. When I do reactions, there have been years where I've done basically a lab as the test grade. Where I give them, hey, here are your here are your products. Here's the procedure. So here are the reactants. I give them the reactants. They got to predict the products, balance the reactions, give me good observations, and that's their test grade. So I've done that before where I've used a lab-based test grade. Something that they draw things, and they make songs, they make skits, things that aren't on here. All those things are viable alternative assessments. I generally tend to use them for units that aren't as critical, like atomic history. It's not as critical as like reactions and nomenclature and stoichiometry and moles. I'm not going to do alternative assessments on those, but here it works. States of matter would be another good one where you could, and intermolecular forces. Those are things where you can use these fairly easily to just give the kids a break, but give those kids who are non-traditional school students an ability to shine. If you're going to do these in groups, that group dynamic and that group grade is always a pain in the butt. You're always going to have that one kid who doesn't work and the other kids have to pull the weight and they're all mad about it. Great life lesson. I always treat it that way of like, hey, you've got to speak up. And when mom and dad come and complain, I'm like, I talked to your child and I said they needed to speak up about it. Think about it. If you're doing a project at work and you've got a teammate who's not working, what do? You speak into it or you just eat it. And so I'm trying to teach the kids the skill that they need to speak into it because it's going to happen again in their lifetime. I'm not going to shy away from it just because it's bad. I'm going to use it as a teachable moment and I'm going to push into it. And once again, it depends on your parents, depends on your administrators, how well you can do this. But I'm going to push into it that way. I'm going to push my kids to be like, hey, this is part of life. You need to learn how to work with people you don't always get along with. And you got to learn how to, if you have a group member who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, how to speak into it, address it with them, and I try to coach them on how to do that. And so I use even those things as teachable moments. So action step. Think about at least one thing each semester, one unit each semester, where you can put in an alternative assessment. Like I said, for me, atomic theory in first semester, kind of states of matter, intermolecular forces, phase change, second semester. Those are two great options. But you can pick other things, whatever floats your boat. So try to keep those things in mind, and I look forward to seeing you in lesson 11.